buenos días a cada una de ustedes. Es de mucha alegría volvernos a
Good morning, everyone. It's so happy to see you again, to greet each other. Welcome, everyone. Today, that is going to be the morning for some, it's the evening for others, and for others, mid-afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Welcome with all your energy, with your light and light stars. Today, it's a special day because we're going to have one of the topics that are very important in this journey for the sixth module, especially the topic related on communication, which also responds to one of the strategies that we have gathered within the process of incidents. And for that, we have two people who are very wonderful, who are doing a great job on communication. And I think that they're the proper people to talk about this topic. We have Isabel Flota. She is an indigenous Mayan from Mexico, and she does intercultural communications to the communities as a joy, but also because that's her job as well. For more than 20 years, so for her, communication is an art as well. It's a way of communicating from a creative standpoint, doing all the technology and the means at her disposal, and also rescuing the wisdom, the strength, the proper ways of towns as indigenous women. And this is what she'll tell us later on. She also has a degree in communication sciences, and she specializes in communication strategies, social communication strategies. She teaches politics. In 2005, she was recognized for her social commitment as a student by the University of Puebla and by the government of Puebla with the Angel Custodian. So welcome, Isabela. It's a pleasure for us to have you here. We also have Citali Simone. She is a member of the communications team for FIMI. She is originally from Hidalgo, Mexico, and works on content creation, digital content creation in intercultural camp. She also graduated from the Carlos in Madrid, an expert on indigenous sounds and human rights and international governance. And she's currently working as a country responsible for the International Forum of Indigenous Women in FIMI. So we welcome them both today. And we may listen to them and learn from them and share with them part of their knowledge. So welcome each one of you, and we leave you with all of your friends, all your peers here who are in the process of this diploma on intercultural research. Welcome. Thank you very much, Lorena. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be recognizing some of our peers with whom we have shared some moments, and also a pleasure to see the new peers. I am thankful for this flow, that this flows and we can share a little bit of what we do, not only in FIMI, but in our collectives, promoting our collective and individual rights. I would like this to be very agile, but I know that we have some theory. So the part that I'm going to be talking about, which is the first session, I'll please ask you to be writing down the response to whatever we're going to be discussing. And also, if you have some questions or doubts along the way, please don't doubt on stopping us so that we can be identifying within your own programs and within your own project, incidents project, or your plans and incidents. You can be edifying what you would like to do for the communications. So we bring Citlali and I a presentation. Let me see. Can you see it now?
Sí se ve.
Yes.
Yes.
Gracias.
Our presentation is on communication, intercultural communications, on gender, and intercultural is very specific because the content and the call for action are for women, indigenous women. There are very different messages to other collectives. In feminism, there's a lot of topics that you can discuss in topics and intercultural and gender. It's a specific language. It doesn't have a messenger, but also receptors with whom we are discussing and with whom we want to discuss and have a dialogue. Here, I'm presenting to you some communication, strategic communications, and we will put an emphasis on what is strategic communications because if it's not defined, some of the elements that are going to be discussed in the presentation, the communication doesn't work because these are messages that are key, very specific, in specific channels to the specific objective. So therefore, we have some questions that is important to be solving along the way. So what are the elements of a communication plan? One, what change do we want to accomplish? What objective communications do we have? What is the audience or communities? We want to, in my case, I like to call them communities because with whom we want to dialogue, with whom we want to be empathizing. And it's a term not extractivist, but in communication, so the audience is always going to be as passive being, but in this case, we want some that is active, who is using their conscience. And those are the three parts that are going to be discussing, that I'll be presenting, and then what is a message, which is the fourth one. Then the means of divulgation, dissemination, and then the evaluation, which Vitaly is going to be discussing later. So the following is a question that you always have to do every time you're going to be doing thinking about communication. Not only the people who study a career or who study a diploma or a specialty on communication, but those who don't have technical preparation, that's not an issue. Because if you are part of this question, or these questions that are going to be discussing later on, this will be clearing the space for you, be very more specific for you and segmented for you. So the first thing we're going to discuss first is what do we want to accomplish? What is our objective? That's the first thing. That's the change that we want to see. This comes within your incidence plans. So I'll ask you first and foremost for the first question that you have to answer is to have the base of communication is to have what objective you want to accomplish with your incidence plan. What is the change? What is the social change that you're looking for? All right, that's the first thing. Here we have the other question, which is, who are we communicating this? To what communities? Who's our audience? Specifically talking about an indigenous town. It could be an authority of your community. It can be journalists. It can be a doctor.
está viendo?
No, nos quedamos en la
Congelada
primera.
en la
No
primera.
corre, se quedó en la primera.
Ay, qué mal. A ver, déjame ver por qué, no sé por qué. ¿Qué será?
Okay, so we're looking at the presentation that was just frozen. Give us a second.
Creo que se quedó como pasmado
¿Trabada?
cuando te dejaban presentar. No sé si se fue como a otra pantalla o algo así.
Ah, sí, porque ahorita está en negro, ¿verdad?
Sí, ahorita no tenemos ninguna
Ok,
presentación.
entonces déjenme ver por qué me está pasando esto. A ver. ¿Y ahora se está viendo?
Se ve, pero un fondo blanco, como que
Borroso,
está la
¿verdad?
pantalla traslúcida, así, algo así.
Ujú.
No es clara. Estaba bien, pero no corría, o sea, sí se proyectaba, pero no corría.
Y ahorita no.
¿Y si actualizas?
Sí, si no, si me puedes ayudar con eso. Yo supongo que es la versión del Zoom que tengo.
Ok, a ver. Bueno,
¿Sí se puede?
acá ya va a funcionar.
Sí está muy extraño que llevaba primero. Sí, funcionaba y de repente ya no. Disculpen, compañeras.
No se preocupe, gracias a ustedes.
A ver, tengo dos monitores y para que no se haga un relajo.
Entonces, si quieres, vamos a la primera para que las compañeras puedan ver. De todas maneras, vamos a compartir este material, pero sí es importante que ustedes vayan siguiendo como la pauta que estamos explicando para
You're
que
going to
al
be following
final
along with
puedan
us
tener un
so that at the end you can have a result
saludable de sus planes de
that is
intervención.
applicable to your incident plans.
Ujú. La segunda, pues, estar en la
The
segunda.
second, we're going to be at the second slide, please. Go back to the second slide.
No te ahora tienes tu micro apagado.
¿Ahí está bien?
No, después del megáfono, en la siguiente. O sea, de la número 2. Esta es la 3.
Ups, perdón. Esta.
No, yo no veo que esté cambiando. Chale.
Sí, ahorita estamos en la tercera, sería la anterior.
Es que te veo en esta. ¿No estás en esta?
Me quedé en esta, estaba explicando esta, pero nada más quiero que vean la lista de
Ah,
del contenido que vamos a desarrollar, pues.
¿esta es correcta?
Estamos viendo el monitor equivocado, Citlali. Si me das
Ah,
acceso, Isabel.
ok.
Sí, mejor te damos acceso. Gracias, Javier.
Ah, ok, estoy moviendo en otro. Ok, sí, está ahí.
A ver, ¿dónde está entonces? Ay, ¿qué pasó? No, creo que sí hay un problema conmigo, con mi Canva, porque me sacó, con mi Canva, con mi Drive, porque incluso me sacó. Ahorita te doy acceso.
Ya le
Ah, ¿ya le
compartí.
hice acceso? Ay, gracias. Mm,
No, no tengo acceso. ¿Me das permisos?
Revisa ahora.
Ya está.
ujú. Ay, muchísimas gracias, Javi.
Still sorting some technical issues. We'll be back in a second.
¿Por qué será? Ahí está. Muchísimas gracias. La siguiente, por favor.
Next slide, please. Oh, in this case, we're talking about the content that we're going to be developing. This index is also be taught on so that it can be easier for you to follow along, and that you can be identifying what elements you need to have and what are the characteristics that you need for a strategic communication plan. It is also important to have a plan. Like I was saying, to have one, you need to be very specific objectives. Generally speaking, in the organizations, we're talking about the organizations, we have a lot of communication we want to transmit and we want to accomplish so many things, but that's the first noise that we get when we're trying to do this objective, when we're trying to do communications. Because the people, if you tell me I want to do 5 things or 10 things, I'm not going to remember everything. I'm going to remember 1 or 2, or the ones that are very closer to me. So that is why it's very important to have the next slide, please. In this slide, here's where I was. Here, what I was wanting to say is that as you're starting to have support to be developing a small plan, we're going to ask you to first answer certain questions and that you sit down and think about them. From your organizations, what can we do when we want to communicate something? Because it's not new. You've already done this in the past. It's just trying to put ideas together. We're trying to put a methodology for you. And that's what I was explaining to you. But this is the base. You have a general objective and specific objectives. You also, we say, who are we going to, who do we want to communicate this? Or who is our target? So that we have a perspective or helps us and becomes an ally in what we want to accomplish. So this is the audiences, the communities that we speak about. And then, once we know them, do we know who they are to achieve our goals? Maybe we don't know them, maybe we do. So the next slide. Here is the first element that we're going to look at. The first element you have to be developing is your change objective.
Identificar el objetivo
You
de
need to
cambio.
identify your change objective or the objectives of change you want to accomplish. You can have many. This is just one. That's a big mistake for communication. What I was saying prior, you might come and general objective and then become developing properly. Sometimes perhaps it's easier to be working on small objectives instead of one big one, because we're very ambitious in the changes that we want to accomplish in the community in regards to a certain issue. So to do the definition of the objective, what we're doing is we're doing these questions, which is going to be helping you as a guide. What changes do you want to see in the community in regard to the problem that you have in your incidents plan? What is it that you want to accomplish? And from there, we have a question that is very more specific, which change of perception of knowledge. Is it an attitude that you want to change? Is it a practice that you want to change that we're trying to generate? This is key. So from there, we identify the communities with whom we want to talk to. Perhaps it could be the authority, which is sometimes there's somebody who leads a process, and then there's others who are just working for people with the government locally or regionally. If this is identifiable, this first element, who do we have here who can talk about, who can share with us, or do we ask randomly? Can you identify your change objective within your own plans and within your incident plans? Naina, within your incident plans, were you able to see your change objectives, what you want to accomplish? With the definition she just gave us, can you see? Are you there? Can you see us? Can you tell us if you can see more or less where your change objective is within your plan? Somebody who wants to open a mic and share the change objective that they have for their incident plans, please. Based on what she just presented. You have the questions there in the slides. Do you have an idea, more or less? Good morning. I want to share a bit about what I have as a change objective I have in my incidence plans. In my study case, my objective is to create awareness with the people, with the women in my community, create awareness on protection of Mother Earth, specifically against all the pollution and the plastic and residues that are shown in our communities. So creating that awareness and empowering the empowerment of women so that they can take ownership of these practices, these cultural practices, ancestral practices, environmental practices that went done in the past, so they can be adopting them and currently, and that this contributes to the issues that with pollution.
Esto está bien bonito, este proyecto.
This is nice. This is a very nice project. And I think that it's key. Communication is key there to create awareness, to be empowering, and through the women be able to protect Mother Earth. Evidently, the communication that we have, or the change that we have here, is a communication that is very participative. It's a communication where women, you have to tell them a lot the message. The message has to be very...
El objetivo de cambio.
You see the change objective there? Or the objectives. And from there, let's go to the next slide, please. Once you have the framework, your objective is the framework for everything. Without it, we can't do anything. And even if you tell somebody to help you with communication for your incidence plan, you have to find first this objective that we want to accomplish. And from there, we go to the communications objective. What do we want to accomplish with the communication in the framework of our objective of change? And this is aligned with what our peer just told us, is to create awareness, to empower the women on the topic of protection of Mother Earth. Perhaps you might have certain allies that are already working with you and who can invite others. And this also helps us. The communications that we do, it's a lot of inviting others to do stuff, to contribute. So in this case, you have two elements. Two elements in your objectives of project and on your communication subject project. You can also have other three more. Something that is very interesting with objectives is that they tell us the action path that we want to work with communications, because many times we first have to start creating awareness, to inform. There, we want to invite, since we already have these people informed, with that same communication, we can invite perhaps, they invite others people. So that's a second objective of communication. So objectives help us what we're doing and what's first, what's second, and what's third. Because when you present a person, like in this case that we're talking about, like Lorena just introduced us, she greeted everyone, then she told us what was the topic about today's session, and then she explained who were the presenters who are going to be today with you, and that's it. And we'll begin with the content of the day. Communication works very similar to that. When you want to explain processes of incidents, if they're not ordered, then people will not understand where you want to be going. Because communication is for change, so that we together can work together and create that change and make that difference in our communities. So you also here have another question here. You hope you guide yourself is, how do you identify what the communication objectives are? And this is what we want to achieve in terms of communication. So that's why I have to be very specific with you. She said, I want to create awareness to empower. And then in the end, the empowerment, that's like the main thing. That's going to accomplish things. But the first thing she wants to do is to create that awareness. That's the first step. Anybody else wants to share based off their project? What's going to be your objective of change within your presentation? And let's bring it down to your communication plan, so that we can see how we're understanding this first explanations. Who else wants to share? Somebody from Africa or Asia? Raise your hands, please. Share with us. Daisy.
Okay, thank you. So my project is on, I'm going to do a research on challenges faced by Pokot Indigenous girls in their pursuit to getting education. And what I'd really like to bring into reality is for the community. It's more of capacity building for my community to get to understand the importance of educating girl child. And I would like to be like one of the examples in the community. And the change I would like to really see is to see the number of girls increasing in schools and all that. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Daisy. Un gusto.
Thank you, Daisy. So that's also good, because your communication is addressed to the families, to the parents of this girl, so that they can allow this education to happen in the girl, so that they can participate in the educational system. So that's interesting. And to create awareness, obviously. It's the same idea. We all want to create awareness. Our communications are talking to that change that we want to accomplish. We want to educate to some extent on different ways of doing things, change the future and the values of in a positive way. Samai, do you want to participate? I feel that this is very clear that how we identify the objective and to whom I want to get a message to. Within my incidence plans, I was talking about being able to socialize with women, with adult women, third age women. What is the path to significant access to indigenous justice to those who are survivors of sexual violence? And my idea is that they can get to know that process. So I want to see a communication from Quechua, but also It can also be through speakers, because they don't have social media, because it's addressed to more third age women. But also, I want to be able to use social media just to create that topic into the youth, into the families and relatives of all ages, of what is sexual violence and what is the ways that this affects, especially third age women. That's more or less what I was thinking about when you were speaking about who is my audience, who's my target audience, just to create that objective for my communications. Yes, everything is just like a weaving. We're weaving. Um, our sisters with very beautiful clothing or bags in many of the communities, and we see cloths and we see things that protect us from the heat, from the sun, from the cold. And the weaving has many layers. So that's what I was thinking. It's the same thing when we talk about our objectives of change and the elements that we need, that we to be defining. You're going to be seeing that the objective is to look at them. And in this case, one leads to another. So, where are you from? I'm sorry, Jesse? Samai, where are you from?
Yo, Samay de Ecuador.
Samai, I'm from Ecuador. Even, you remember me a lot of some communities here in Mexico, in Oaxaca. No, many, I know, not only Oaxaca, but many states here use speakers to transmit a message. A speaker in a language is a big element, because how do I get the radio? There are places where community radios, and and they have easy access. So they say, I want to go get the speakers. So the speakers are one of the main elements for communication used in communities. So you're already thinking about the channels of communication. And that's what my peers gonna speak to you later on. Are you already talking? You already know who you're gonna talk to. So let's go to the next slide, Javier. And we're trying to do the key identification. Here I'm talking about the tone of the communication, which is what the other three peers have told us already who have participated. I want to inform, I want to inspire, I want to generate interaction. So all these things that we see here, the tones of the communication, it's not the same to inform the people, the ladies, about how they're going to proceed with the authorities in terms of violation. And this is a topic, for example, that can be very hard to touch in the communities, but there's many ways to discuss them. I also like in Colombia, they do circle of words. And these are moral meetings with 5 people. They're not massive. There's with people who already know each other and they have the same issues. So the dialogue's easier to be open to proposals. It's open to have solidarity. And that's where they have that moment, that key moment to inform more about what's happening with all of these topics, especially when we're talking about sexual violence. There was elder women who are not spoken of because they won't talk about it. And not only in that country, I know it happens in many countries. We dialogue about kitchens, when we're cooking, when we are burning their clay or working with clay, we're working together. Always around an activity where we feel ourselves very intimate to share something that is happening to us, with our children, with our husbands, with with an industry that is coming and polluting our water. So this is important to identify those spaces, which are also channels, without losing in sight that you are going to be in that activity with those speakers, and you're going to be able to inform about a meeting, a community meeting, where you're going to be able to talk about sexuality, for example. And that's where you can start talking about the message that you want to transmit. And that's going to be later on today, today's presentation. Even here, we're talking about tone, which is our inform, generate interaction, create incidents, to inspire, to strengthen dialogue, to identify, and to report something that is happening. But also, you can talk about other tone of communication that I'm not putting in there. That you have more options in this case, and that this will allow you to have uh, uh, create that plan for your incident plan. Perhaps right now you're only thinking about the elder women, and in some moment perhaps you're gonna invite the municipality leaders or another person who is of interest within that project. Lorena, you want to say something? A tone of communication might be denouncing. Yes, yes, it can. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes, that can also determine whom we're going to talk to. Denouncing who do you want to know about this situation? And if we want them to have them work with us as a collective, and that they know about this, or just denounce it publicly to an authority. But that's why it is important to have these objectives very clear, because because we want to denounce something, we need to have that support, that public support that allows us to remain protected within our community. Sometimes when we want to talk, those of us who do talk about defenders of violence in the territory, if you do denounce and they don't have a strategy for communicating something, making that denouncing, they run more risk and they're more vulnerable to have their integrity being attacked in one way or another. So this is easier to have people protected among themselves because they know that somebody's working on a specific topic. If you find that it's pertinent, that it's something where you're denouncing something, they can be public, to whom you're going to be addressing, who's going to be doing this. But it can also be that you can be creating a collective denunciation to protect yourself, where you're using a symbol that unifies you, and that way we can protect your identity as well. This is also important. Within the communications, we talk about the objectives, the protection of your identity, your integrity. What is the best way the community can protect you for the authority, and if the authority can protect you, and if you want to attack you, then there is a way for this to be known of, and then they can protect you. So you know who's coming in? It could be a collective process, and then it can be the name of the community or the name of the collective or the town, or etc. The next slide, please. If you have questions, please let us know. And here, I'm giving you more examples. We're talking about examples that you can also recognize.
una palabra como un poco complicada o cómo le hago para hacer incidencia con la comunicación. Entonces, aquí es donde les decía, bueno, generar presión social para que una institución o autoridad tome una
Here's where I was saying
decisión
create social
basada en
incidents
nuestra influencia.
based on our influence.
Entonces, esa es parte de la
So
incidencia.
that's
¿Cómo
part
podemos
of
hacer para
the
que
incidents.
en el
How are we going
Instituto
to
de Pueblos
achieve
Indígenas
that in the
eh,
Institute of
nos
Indigenous
escuchen
Peoples,
sobre
we are
una
heard based
situación
on
que estamos
a
viviendo
situation that we're living,
asociado
that we
a
need
consentimiento libre previo informado
to have a
¿no?
previous free
de
consent form
uso
signed
de un recurso
or
como digamos
audience
el
of
agua
a use
o
of a
nuestro
natural
medio
resource
ambiente,
like water, of our
etcétera,
rivers or
¿no?
lagoons, etc.
Entonces, aquí
So
estamos poniendo
here
igual
we add
algunos ejemplos
some
para que
examples
ustedes puedan
so
reconocer
that
mejor.
you can recognize it
El
better.
siguiente,
The
les
next
pongo
one,
ejemplos para
which is also of examples, please.
ok.
Okay.
Aquí también podemos ver
Here we
la
can
parte
also
de
see,
identidad.
for
Al
example,
interior
the
de
subject of
grupos o de
identity. So
comunidades, muchas
within
veces
the
es
groups or
necesario
communities, it's a
reforzar
lot of the times it's necessary to
diferentes tipos de
reinforce
identidad de
amongst each
pertenencia,
other the
sentirnos
identity
parte. Yo creo
of
que
belonging, to
incluso
feel like we
cuando
belong to something.
hacemos
So we feel that in a lot of the
buscamos
times, everything
buscar
that
una
we
razón
do
única,
looks
nos
to
apropemos de
question
la
us
razón
and to
para
recognize each other. Communication for
cambiar las
social
cosas.
change looks for
Es
that as well.
importante
So
también
it's always very
tenemos
important
que
to
nos
have
ayuden a
these
sentirnos
mechanisms
preparados,
ready that help
¿no?
us
A formar
to feel
una
ready
comunidad
to
y a
be a
formar
part of
parte
the
de la
community
comunidad alrededor de ese proyecto que ustedes quieren
around
hacer.
surrounding that
No
project that you want to
necesariamente
make.
tampoco
Not
quiere decir
necessarily
que tiene que
does
ser
it
todo
mean that
mundo, ¿no?
everybody
En
needs
este
to be
caso,
there.
el
In
ejemplo que
this
iba
case, the
compartiendo la
example
compañera eran las señoras
is
mayores, ¿no? Las mujeres que
older
habían
ladies
vivido cierta
that
violencia.
had lived
Entonces,
certain
no
violence.
empezar
So
solo con ellas
we
y luego
start maybe only
identificar
with
quiénes
them
más
and then we
queremos
identify who
integrar,
else
¿no?
we have to integrate, okay?
La siguiente,
The next
estos
slide,
ejemplos los van a tener
these examples
en
you're
la
also
hojita.
going to have them so you
Y
can
ya el
identify.
tercer elemento
And finally, the third
les
element that
explicaba
I have
es
here to
las
explain
audiencias o
is the
comunidades.
audiences or communities, okay?
Prefiero llamarlas
I
comunidades
prefer to call
más
them
porque
communities, as I said at the
buscamos
beginning.
dialogar,
Why? Because
buscamos
we're
tener
trying to
una
dialogue.
comunicación
We're trying
inteligente
to have an
y
interactive
generalmente
communication.
se piensa
Generally,
las
we think
organizaciones o
that
empresas o personas
organizations or companies or
cuando
people, they always say, oh, I want
pero
to
también
communicate
tenemos que
this.
estar pensando
But we also need to
que las
think
personas van a venir
that the other people are going to come
contactarnos. Incluso
and
nosotros
communicate
mismos,
something
¿no?
to
Con
us.
Madre
So
Tierra, con
we
todos estos
communicate with
organismos que
Mother
están
Earth, with all the
en
elements that are
en el espacio y en el universo.
in the space and
Desde
in the universe.
la energía del sol,
The energy of the
de la
sun,
luna,
the energy
o
of the
las,
moon,
de las nubes nos dicen,
the energy
nos
of
dicen muchas
the
cosas de qué
clouds
viene,
tell us a
en el
lot of
año, cómo
how
se
what the year is going to look
energía.
like, what the day is going to
Es
look
lo
like.
mismo también entre los seres,
It's the same
como
thing
nosotros, ¿no?
amongst
Como las
other
personas
beings,
y como los
like other
animales.
people and like
Entonces,
animals.
estamos
So
interactuando,
we
estamos
are
todos conectados
interacting,
y el
we are
trabajo
all
entonces
connected, and the work that
tiene
we
que estar
do
pensando
has to
en
be
esas
thought out
comunidades, ¿no? En este
for these
caso
communities. In this
de las
case,
señoras, no se trata solamente de que
not
ellas
just about
reciban
them,
los
the
mensajes que
ladies
vamos a entregar,
receive the
sino
messages that we're
también
going to
qué
deliver, but
piensan sobre
also
ello,
what
cómo
do
se
they think
sienten
about
sobre
them?
ello,
How do
cómo
they
pueden
feel about them?
participar,
How can
¿no?
they participate?
Que no es nada más
That
un uso de las
it's not
personas en
just
el sentido de que solo
a
ellas
use of
van a recibir,
people in the sense that they're going
pero
to
sí es muy
receive.
importante,
But it is
como
very
ustedes lo
important,
mencionaron, las
as you
compañeras,
mentioned, the
reconocer quiénes
sisters,
son,
to
dónde se
recognize
reúnen,
who you
si
are,
ya no
where do you
salen,
meet,
si ya no
if you
salen
not if you
a
don't go out
conversar,
anymore, why
dónde se
not?
reúnen a
Why can't
conversar.
you, why do you go out
Por
to talk, and
ejemplo,
where do you gather to
quiénes
talk?
son,
And for
qué
example,
grupo de
who are
personas
you?
realmente
What are the
pueden
group of people
acompañarte en
that
lograr
can really
o en
accompany you
beneficiarse,
to achieve
qué
the objective you wanted to achieve? What is your interest? What is the decision-making power that they have based on the topic that we established? Something that I love from the sisters, I'm going to translate my messages to their language, because the elderly women don't speak Spanish. And so to think that from the get-go is to think of the other person, and is to think that your message needs to be empathetic to the other person. So it's necessary to identify. For example, another space that I feel are spaces of communicative power in the communities are the stores, where we buy the sugar, the coffee. In Mexico, they're tortillas, or wherever, whatever they sell things for regular consumption. So these little stores, and they have a community, and they put signs up to say, we invite you to come to our workshop on anything really, a workshop to make ecologic fertilizers, or we invite you to a meeting between women on violence, no? So it's very beautiful, because we have these spaces that help us to get closer to the people that we want to have an incidence on, that we have identified we can have an incidence on. For example, with kids, you say, how am I going to communicate this to a child? Well, going to the schools and communicating to the parents or the teachers, for example, no? So that's kind of how we're going to be more specific, our communication be more specific. Does anybody have any questions on this third element of communities? Somebody that wants to share how they have identified anything else? How you have identified? Somebody from Asia? We haven't had an intervention from somebody from Asia. Do you want to share something? Nobody wants to share?
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Buenos días.
Yeah, my research topic is socio-economic condition of Tamang women in Nepal. So I'm talking about the socio-economic condition, and my target group is women who involve in any kind of income source, a job, or any entrepreneur, or those women who are not working anything, just engaging in household work, and also a community leader. Yeah, those are my informant. Yeah, and yeah, and another is women who is in policy making level. So I want to talk with them as well, because maximum indigenous women are backward in terms of economic condition. So I wanna talk with the community advocacy level, yeah, to know why they are still in backward, and we have a good policy, but it's not implement. So I wanna inform the local people, our women. They have a rights. They can work. They can earn. They can speak. So I just motivate them, and I just empower them. Yeah. Thank you.
Naina, muchas gracias. Uy, qué interesante también tu proyecto.
Thank you, Naina. What an interesting project. And if you observe, you're also going to have some information of like when you talk to a person and you invite them to participate to something because you want to convince them of something, it has a whole action plan. The first time you meet them, you're not going to tell them everything you want to do. You're going to start sharing some things. And they tell us, yes, I'll come back. I'm interested to come back. And you can see it with other sisters. Oh, I identify with them because maybe I'm also producing toys. Maybe another one produces dresses, another one who makes shawls, and they all have an activity that generates economy or some kind of money. So maybe you have women that are very different, working in very different things, but they are empowered financially and they need, and they have the same problems, right? So right now, you were very clear on your action guide that implies first to invite them, then inform them, bring them together to demand that the public policies are not efficient and say, hey, this isn't working. Also, that's another community. The government sometimes feels that their policies are very easy to implement, and it's not true because when they come down to their communities and we want to have access to them, maybe we don't speak the language of the public person and we need a translator, or we don't write and we can't fill in the text or the format that they ask us in a different moment. There are situations that we don't have, for example, bank account. We can open one that's for all of us because we have a sister that does comply with all the requisites, things like that. This is very interesting to recognize what are the problems of the community that wants to exert pressure in the government or an institution, a secretariat of economy and finance in the government, things like that, and then go step by step. But if you notice, it's step A, step B, step C, and that's how communication is. We explain slowly to the sisters where we're going with their consensus and understanding what it is that they want to achieve. And of course, that's where your incidence projects come from. Yes, Jesse. We can't hear Jesse. Okay, welcome. My incidence plan is focused towards the carrying of water and resources, but this term of this communications, this topic of communications and audiences makes me think of how can we communicate to certain audiences. For example, I think when we communicate on hydric stress and climate change can be approached differently with different parts of the population. So with different communities, it can be discussed in a certain way that's different than from when you deal with it with children, for example. So in that sense, to try to communicate something through other strategies, like for example, sociodrama or a theater, those are other communication strategies, correct? Yes, of course. You see, that's where I say we don't have to necessarily study communications to know that we're already doing it. Simply, it's to recognize how we are different and how each one of us recognizes or understands things better. A sociodrama is perfect for children, for parents of children, and that's a mechanism, that's a means of communication. I don't know why we think that a media communication is television or radio or social networks or the phone. There are other ways to communicate that are through a social drama or through these power spaces like stores or church or a person. A person has an impressive amount of power, community, like a teacher. Teachers within the community have a strong level of calling, and they're also a channel of communication. And yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, teacher. I just want to share my experience because I'm collecting data about my research. My research is directly related to violence against Indigenous women. So I went to the office, lawyer office, and I saw two women are there. They are violent. They are face violence in their life. So there are others community. So I cannot understand her language. Even she can understand my language. So when we are talking about with lawyer, and she told the lawyer, okay, can you give me a paper? So she argued, and she expressed her feelings about the art, how she is feeling about it. So I think that time I realized that of course art can be a communication process, and I feel so. Even I got nervous to talk about her and her incident because I wasn't prepared mentally. I was I'm going to talk with lawyer, but I'm not mentally prepared to talk with her. And when I saw her, I couldn't find a word because I was thinking about if I say anything, if I could hurt her. So I was thinking about the lots of things in my mind, and I was that time I was nervous, and she told me that don't get nervous. If I was inspired by her word, she told me that if we are not speak about it, then no one can speak about the incident. Even if I'm not speaking about myself, that no one can help her. So it was so inspiring for me, and she gave me a art, and I told her about my research, and she argued about her feelings, how she wants to do, and everything. Thank you, teacher.
Ay, muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for this example.
Excellent example of what we want to achieve with communication. Communication can be art and can be a painting. It's great. Sometimes we don't speak the same languages, and we need to communicate and understand what's happening in the other side. And even if we don't use words, in this case, we don't use words. We're using graphics. And in this example, she told us just we have empathy when we communicated. Empathy, feelings, that's an achievement. That's an objective. This is the communication in community. Don't forget that you have a lot of tools nearby you, that you don't need so much money. So maybe this is a clue for your project. Start to go to those places and give a ¿cómo se llama? A training of art shop, un workshop of art, no? Let's start painting and paint our feelings or our something about our problems, the violence that we are living, no? So it's really interesting what you have said. You know your community. You are the expert in your community. The only thing you need is to see with empathy the others that are your community that with you want to connect and interact. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias por ese ejemplo. Este ejemplo fue extraordinario. Todos son importantes y todos son necesarios y
All
todos
the
son...
examples are extraordinary and important and useful, but here we start looking at an element that's even more key and simpler. Not always sophisticated communication like social media is the best, or TV or radio. This example is key. She can make a decision and say, I'm going to implement a workshop, a drawing workshop with the sisters that are living in violence, and they don't necessarily, we're not going to necessarily ask them to draw their violence. We invite them to a drawing workshop, which is less invasive than saying, oh, you're gonna draw what happened to you. We're gonna connect through that workshop, and not necessarily do we have to talk that language. In Asia, there are too many languages, and sometimes it's a very complicated challenge to overcome. So how beautiful. Thank you for that example. Anybody else would like to share? Anyone else? Okay. Here we give you these questions so that you can identify who are the people that are interested, maybe the first stage of your implementation of communication plan for your incidents project. You only have to open to 1 or 3 audiences, and then you add others. It's the same thing. Remember, I go, I person, and I start adding the amount of information slowly so that they are committed a little bit more as time progresses. And then all of a sudden, you realize that together or individually, you want to invite a governor or a local doctor, or you want to invite a teacher of the school, and then you start including people that have a certain decision-making power and that have a way to change a situation. Sometimes within our communication plan, we say, no, we're just going to talk to the authority. We're not going to do a women's assembly. I'm going to go as a representative of the sisters and do it because they decided that I was going to go. Sometimes it's like that. So even that is strategic communication. That's why that you always need a designer or somebody who knows how to manage social media or do photography or video, because community communication comes from tools and elements that are more adequate for you. Like we mentioned, drawings and some people to attract others, like are strategic, like teachers or a social worker, or just somebody you identify in your community who are leaders. And we know that there's a person, a lady that manages the savings box. Here in Mexico, we have a savings box that we organize between women, and they're not from a bank or a financial institution, just savings boxes that we organize. And those women have an authority in the community. And when you say, hey, Mama, can you help me with this? They can invite other people that are in their safe box, and she says yes. And that's perfect. So, anybody else? Any question or comment? I am in point 3.
Go on, Daisy.
Go on, Daisy.
Thank you, teacher. Okay, I just wanted to share on the audiences, on the people that I'm going to meet, my project being on the challenges that girls face while trying to acquire education. One is I'm going to meet the community elders, since we still have a council of elders as a community, which is like our ruling guide and all that. Secondly, I'm going to engage a teacher in the local schools, because we have one local school in the whole area. I'm going to try and talk to them so that I can get to understand more about why the school has a low number of girls and all that. And I'm going to engage the local government. In our community, we have the county, we have the lower ones. So I'm going to talk. I've already started communications with one of them, the assistant chief. And I find it very interesting because he's also interested. He's been saying that he's been really fighting issues of FGM and early marriages, but he cannot do it. So he wants now us to come with a good approach, because I told him on how we are supposed to like approach the community, how I've been trained on how to talk to them, how I'm supposed to do things. And he was very happy about it, and he's much eager for me to start and go and do it with him. So thank you.
Maravilloso, muchísimas gracias.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, a communications plan has different elements and different actors. Amongst all of us, we are already identifying the communications components for our plans and our incidents, our projects and our incidents plan. We go step by step. We don't have to be experts in communication to know what we want to achieve, with whom we want to achieve it, and how we segment all of this. Of the biggest mistakes that we make in communication with collectives and organizations is that we do a big bag and say we want to communicate to the general public XY. Currently, that doesn't work. That doesn't work anymore. Not only if we want to do a digital online communication, but also a community communication, that doesn't work. And the reason is because it's something much more specific, much more to create a strategy of change. So each one of you has given an example, and you are doing a perfect follow-up of what you want to do and what you are going to do. So if you want, you can go down to the next presentation. I think with all these perfect examples that you have shared, and this last one that Daisy made, she really detailed what she wants to do and how she's doing it. It's key, no? So we have to identify our objectives, and that if for each one of those objectives, we have to speak to somebody different. Who's going to be interested? Who's going to help us as an ally? Or who's going to help us as a part of the group that we want to bring together to change the situation that we are living? Next slide, Javier, please. Here we are talking about the same thing, which is that we're discussing and that you have shared. It's not the same thing to talk on a social network than to speak to a person in your community and invite them to participate. So it's the same thing. You are identifying it. I don't know if anybody else wants to show us an example of all the things that we are already discussing. The next slide, Javier, please. This is a lot of text, but it's a lot of what we are already reflecting on. So it's going to stay with you as a guide. Here I explain the general public to believe that a message serves for everyone. Somebody said, oh, I want to talk to children. Well, I'm going to do a play. It's different. You are identifying very well that you can't talk to an adult the same way that you approach a elderly woman or a mother or a man, dad, or an authority, whether it's man or woman, that's a community authority. Each person needs to be spoken to differently through different ways. The next one, okay. Here, my Citlali is going to come in. But to close on this, I was saying in the previous slide that we also have to identify who is the primary community, who are the most important, and who are the secondary and tertiary. Why? Because, for example, in FIMI, the first thing we do is say Indigenous women and the organizations of Indigenous women are the most important for us. That they receive what we're doing. For example, that they know a subvention request, for example. But for us, it's more important that donors know what happened with their money, okay, from that campaign. So it's a secondary public that it doesn't mean that is less important, but that in the consequential, in the process of communication, it goes on a second level. And finally, it's to share the impact of that subvention in the projects, for example, to a government. Now, when you denounce something, it's different. The primary public is going to be the government and the authorities so that they take actions of protection. So maybe in that sense, when you denounce something, then the primary public changes. So it's important that you identify that as well in your incidents project. Who am I going to speak to first? And who's my first audience, and second and third? Also based on that, on what you want to achieve and your general objective as your reference framework and your specific objectives as well. I think that that covers everything. And we have developed these first three topics, and each one of you has been able to identify very well what you're going to do and with whom. The clearer you are of defining these specifics, that's going to provide you to weave your communications plan. And then at some point, if you have any doubt, you can always, of course, ask. It's all welcome. Thank you so much. Does anybody have a question or another comment, or somebody that wants to share, or a question that you want to, or a doubt that you have that you want to clear up? Anybody has anything they need to ask? If that's not the case, then I give the floor to my friend Citlali so that she can move on to the next content. Daisy, go ahead. Daisy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I just had a question. I was wondering, because, for example, in my research, it's all about girl child education, and the girls that are affected are mostly below the age of 18, which in Kenya, an adult is considered to be 18 years. So I was wondering, am I allowed, like when for example, I want to undertake interviews, because they'll say no consent and all that. Am I allowed to take pictures and videos, or I just interview by audio?
For everything, you need a consent. If you are doing interviews, you need a consent, because the word has cultural knowledge. So you can't take interviews without asking them first if they give you the consent for the purpose of the research. Even though the pictures, even though the other things, but for the audio you need consent too. Sí.
Thank you.
Okay, I answer all what you have in dots. Okay. No, you're welcome. Lorena. Adelante, compañera. No escuché. No se escucha tu voz, Lore.
No, no escuchaba, pero sí, ahora sí. La pregunta es...
Okay, my question is, in the incident plan, then as an activity, is it convenient for their peers to include a communication plan following the path of the methodology or the steps that you have given us today? Yes, exactly. So most of them have a communication strategy planned out. Among the strategies, they have communications. And within that strategy, they need to foresee the preparation or formulation of the communication plan and the implementation of the communication plan. Is that what you're saying? Yes. You follow these steps that we are mentioning right now, and Lisa's going to continue forward. It'll be easier for you to be defining the steps to follow so you can have a plan at the end. Be careful though, not because we do a plan, a strategic plan doesn't mean that you always have to do it and you can't change it. We work with people, we work with human beings who change their opinion, who change their attitudes. So in one point or another, you can change or add. And by adding, I mean an audience, add an objective in this process, in this plan. But it's always important to be planned out something at the beginning, being very clear what is the objective of change you want to accomplish. Without objective of change, it is very hard. You can say, I want to inform the general public. That's too vague. And you can't measure that. And that won't allow us to know if we are creating the impact that we want. But if we are contemplating within that process that they have a communication plan with this pattern, then yes, we can start adjusting it and we can have a communication plan that is very simple at the end of the diploma, and we can go over it again so that we can make the adjustments that are necessary. Yes, yes, Lorena, thank you for pointing it out. Anyone else? Or do we go to the next component?
Perfecto. Adelante.
All right. Please, do your question. Hello, hello everyone. Well, with Isabel, we can see what the objective of change that we want to change or the incidents we want to accomplish in the plans and how we can bring that down to our communication perspective. And regarding that, and who we're trying to talk to so that we can generate the change that we want and identify some of the audiences. And we spoke of some high school, the first or second part, third part, and how can we come to terms with these people? Well, the next phase, which is the messages, they require a lot of that empathy. They require that we are able to know our audience, that we can know them and be able to share messages with them based on their life, based on their experiences, so that they can connect with what we're sharing and feel that we are speaking to them directly. And well, as a campaign, those messages are going to be based on those messages, those audiences. and those changes we're putting out. Those changes can be perceptions based on habits, based on the information that we have with different objectives that we have, like Isabel mentioned. So to get these changes, what do we need? What does the audience need? What arguments work for them? And what don't work for them? This way we are able to what has been done before, how people have. This is an active listening, and like Isabel mentioned, it is not rigid. So it's based off on how we're listening, observing what has been done before, so that we can make the proper adjustments to our communication plans, and that we can be able to accomplish the objectives. So what doesn't work? See what has done in the past, what is currently being done. There's many people who have been implementing perhaps an activity, and in that feedback we can see, based on that research, we can see some changes. We can see what the experience was. And this helps obviously because we need to know our audience to be able to share a message that gets them. The next slide, please. Like I mentioned before, you need to be able to be active listener. You'll be able to listen to what the audience is saying, what they're trying to comment, and know about their audience, their values, their interests, their thinkings, their feelings, knowing what they're going through, knowing the means that the media that they listen to, what do they read, what do they listen to. There is an empathy map tool that what is the people thinking, what are they doing. Those are more technical. What are they watching? What are they reading? Because based on that information, we can choose the best channels of communication, the best format to reach people based on what the audience is consuming and how they are informing themselves or how they can get information the best. And also in this space where everything is like everything they eat, the faster I get it, the better. Just 7 seconds. We're 8 seconds now. TikTok, another 4 minutes. We have like next video. So we're facing a big challenge on the context on terms of on the amount of information that we have and how much information we take, which is relevant for us. There's people who might
Una disculpa. Bueno, que tengamos información clara y concreta.
want to provide concrete information, clear and concrete information, and that this information can be given to the next person. That when you get to that, my best publicity or my best marketing is word of mouth, one-on-one recommendations. But just to get that, we have the strategy. You need to find those messages. They're going to be easy to be remembered, and that I'm just going to be sharing to the other person. Just no, I saw a TikTok that said this and that. So identifying that, finding those keywords, finding those words that the audience uses, to use them in the messages that we give, and that they become their own. To generate these changes that we want for incidence plans, let's talk about what the audiences need so they can have an involvement and they get participation. What arguments can we bring their attention to? What phrases can we use so they can keep in their mind? And this is a guide that is very valuable because it allows us to reflect on on what we want to do, but also how to reach it, how to use communications to reach it. Here in Mexico, we had a campaign when we wanted to do an airport in the Lake Texcoco. There was a campaign that had to be listened to by the people, but the message was that I prefer the lake. So, and that's what we wanted to see. I mean, putting it first at Mother Earth with their traditions in based against a major project like an airport. But it was a project that the whole context that was generated in the country was canceled. This project was canceled here in Mexico. It was, I'd rather have a lake. And they put in the profile for Facebook. And it was a campaign that was becoming viral, and in the end, it added to other people. And the communication is not that it does all the work, but it adds to all the actions that are being done in the other project. So here we have some questions. Perhaps somebody wants to share with us. Have you seen incidents? Something that comes to mind to you? Perhaps a word, a phrase, or something that you want people, that your audience that you're going to talk to, the narrative that you're going to be discussing with them. You want to communicate this, right? So everything that I'm saying, if you're going to take something, let it be this. Anyone? What does the audience need to know in order to choose how to participate and become involved? Through which ideas or arguments can we successfully grab their attention? Which phrase do we want our target audience to remember? All right, let me pick one. Okay, anyone? How do you pronounce your name? Excuse me?
Vivian.
Vivian.
Yes. So my audience would want to understand my project, would want to understand my objectives so that they know what I expect from them and they tell me what they expect from me. So to me, number one thing that my audience needs to know is my objectives, my aim of my research. Thank you.
Ok, bueno. La siguiente, Javier, por favor. Ok. Y bueno, después de las preguntas anteriores que ustedes puedan... se escucha aquí la traducción. Bueno, después de las preguntas anteriores...
After we saw these messages, each message can be developed and repeated and converted into different formats. So it could be through video, it could be through infographic, it could be messages, it could be murals or posters. You can be speaking in an assembly, it can be through photos. There's different ways of format in which the message can be expressed. Next slide, please.
Muy bien. Además de los formatos, hay
Besides
canales.
the formats, we have other channels as well. Once we know the messages, we can then follow it, the formats that we can be implementing. We can be selecting the channels where we're going to be putting that. For this, it is important to know where our audiences are. Are they going to be in Twitter? Or are they going to be, or are they in LinkedIn? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Facebook? Those are the spaces online that we can find. But if the easiest thing is to send a message through WhatsApp, or if it's convenient to send an email to these people. So there are different channels online that we can have access to. And then obviously each channel can generate, have their own format, and that's like the text, the picture, the visual thing, or maybe an audio video. That's what people connect more. It's getting more attention and traction. But if you have the proper message, they can also work with audio. Or perhaps on WhatsApp, a message can be doesn't require that so many technological requirements on the internet. Is to have access to information and the quality they have. So if it's that efficient, then at least in Latin America, WhatsApp uses less data and can easily get the message based on compared to audio or video.
¿Podrías actualizar la presentación ahorita como agregando otras fotos a esta
I think we added some new pictures to this slides. Can you update this slide, please? Well, there's physical parts, and then there's digital parts and digital parts. We saw the other part, and then later on I'll talk more about our social media as far as the particulars that they have, and also when selecting the channels, not only the digital ones, but also the communities.
Tenemos diferentes opciones, ¿no? Puede ser, y que bueno, que en función del contexto que estemos viviendo.
And based on the context where we live in, like we spoke before, we took the defense of the territory, which is very complex. In some spaces, like you're saying, is that we do murals. We do murals to transmit cohesion, community cohesion, to transmit the community is being reorganized, or for this part of the identity that we're being lost as youth, etc. So one word starts the channels of the murals and trying to portray that cultural diversity in one way or another. Like an articulate community that's organized. So these are strategies that they have decided and they do have an incidence on the objective. Like for example, defending territories. So this is more from the security point of view. To both the community or the external community or a more organized community. Also, we spoke about for the children, the storytelling, puppet tales, puppet shows, trying to do a narrative, trying to do a story on what you want to do. So the topic that you are identifying that is going to be discussed, get into school is a nice strategy. It's a good channel because through stories, it's easy to share the message. Also, other peers have talked about the work being done, trying to speak to women, and well, women feel more in trust being around women. Well, there is more women than men, so perhaps with men they're going to be. It depends on the region. So walking around the fire, walking around the kitchen, around spaces where women can get together, and that's where. So now you don't take the paperwork. You take the computer. So Instead, the message is spoken word of mouth. As you're cooking, as you're preparing the meals, and you're sharing, and once you're sharing other knowledges regarding nutrition. Also, when you have the festivals, community festivals, the celebrations, community celebrations, there's also channels for communication that can be used to have an impact on people because the people in the communities have different spaces and attended spaces. So you can talk about an exhibition game based on the topic. You can be adding to the cultural side of it and sharing your message. You can also be. I'm giving an example from Mexico. I'm sorry, but those are the ones that are fresh in my mind. But in Mexico and other Latin American spaces, we celebrate the Day of the Dead in November. So there, you can have activation campaign explaining an altar with the municipality. In the municipality of the state, and it was focused on defending territory. And the whole activation was around defending the territory on the Day of the Dead, where a lot of people make altars to remember those who have gone. And they saw that this space was a good moment to take advantage and to talk about the defending of the territories through the festivities. Like Isabel was saying, communities, in our communities, you can always put the poster, but you can also speak with the person who is looking after, sharing what the project is about, sharing the intention of the activity, because you can get there, it's a great person, you talk about the weather. So an option is that to create a conversation, talk about your project. So you can be looking at your project as well, a person who can talk about this activity and convince other people to get involved. But also identify what are the key messages that you want to be able to keep sharing. Yes, Jessie, you have a question. Thank you. I'm thinking about other spaces where you have a lot of communications with communities. And this part about, in our communities, we have a lot about, you have the roof spaces where you have a general assemblies for the communities and festivals. And people come together to talk about whatever and share a moment together. So these spaces that exist, you can take advantage of those. And you also have in Mexico, like you're saying, we have people who can they created somehow to the corn. The grandmother, the mothers, and the children, the girls come to the windmills, come to the mills, sorry, to create the mass for making tortillas and other food. But there's other spaces where you see the people, the women coming together and to discuss whatever topic. But it's also space. And I'm thinking about the rivers. Many times, in the women come to the rivers and come together among neighbors on the time that they're gonna go wash on the river. So they come together at certain time. Yes, it's very early in the morning or in the afternoons when the sun's coming down. So these are spaces. There's a nice spaces where you're able to share based on the context that you have, the nature, population, the company, the people. So these are spaces where you can be able to share with more confidence. And on what you were commenting before, yes, community radios as well. They play an important role in our communities, especially those in which you have communications on tongues, on the native tongues, on the native languages. I'm here on this side of Huasteca, in Hidalgo, and here, between Hidalgo and Veracruz and San Luis, we have the popular the town language. And this has a big impact on the communities because they're also communicating in three languages, or four languages, which is Spanish, Nahuatl, Nahuatl, Tepehual. So it's very relevant to keep that in mind because you talk about human rights, you talk about the environment, you talk about violence, and in the end, you don't know if it's reaching the population or if they're taking ownership of the message. And it's also become an ally because this part of the movement of the towns and defending their territories. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you. Yes, community radios are allies because you need to take into account in your plans, in your incident plans, because they're trying to find that content, that information, trying to add to sharing to those spaces. And when it's community, well, you have that space, you have more openness to discuss this topic related to the protection of indigenous women. And also you have to be able to think about, you have two activities, right? You have like the incident plans and also coming back to a research, of giving back on the research. So you can identify there, based on the project, two types of audiences. So radio or the communication media that you have for the communities are important allies to share the message that you have. Also in these spaces called galeras, where you have community people coming to talk about community assemblies, taking the word and being able to share the message that you have in those meetings, but also being able to use, take advantage of people coming together and create a photographic session, because not always we have the space to talk about so many different topics in the community assemblies, but you can also have the possibility to discuss more or to go more in depth with some topics. Taking into account there's a group of people there, so take pictures and even just put in the posters, put in the information that you have as a way of delivering information. Delivering the material that you have to create that impact. And also being organized on sporting activities and the tournament, call it a tournament. I don't know. FIMI, I think, has supporting games in women in sports, being promoted as a physical activity, discussing incidents. So they have athletic races in some places for a cause. Well, here, well, the soccer or basketball or a different sport, to talk about ending violence against women. So this will also work to talk about other topics and spaces where the people are already involved, or where people are coming together. So these are just examples that I'm giving you. I don't know if anybody else has an experience, or do you have another idea of physical spaces in which we can come together and share a message?
Podría ser también en las
It could
iglesias.
also be in the churches. Here in Guatemala, in our town, on Sundays, based on the religions that you might have, you have mass, you have congregations of different people based on the public that you want to reach. But if you want to do something that is massive or create awareness, it can also be through that guy, through the calls, because there's a spaces after church, so after mass, you put together the elements, like you were saying.
La investigación, no hacer una presentación formal ni magistral, sino algo creativo. A mí sí me ocurría.
So the creative.
de los festivales
We
de
lived the
arte,
experience here with the art festival based on a different topic,
defensa de la tierra, cuidado del agua,
based on defending the earth, protecting the earth,
luego cultura libre,
no violence against
violencia contra las mujeres,
life against violence against women, protecting the earth, action to right to education,
el festival, y se invita artistas
and then inviting the
que se basen en la temática
based on the topic, on the investigation,
del festival artístico, que tenga la expresión de movimiento, que sería la danza,
that expresses the movement that is there, the words that are being used, or like music, or poems.
son 4 expresiones, pero pues es la
This is 4 expressions. So see,
podría ser, o sea, hay
so it can be based on that.
posibilidades que la
So there's the possibilities and the communication it gives us.
en los espacios de las
So we can take advantage of the church or the community assemblies that exist in our towns, and where we can have a different amount of people together. We're talking about water or other public spaces that they can think about it, where we can share this information.
es en la salida, en los parques,
In the parks, in the towns, in the municipalities. If you have a spaces where people come in and out, these are spaces that are you have a lot of people coming in, and it's going to be based on our community that we want to reach, what is the audience that we want to reach,
la comunicación
and how our communication we cover the regional languages and communicate the visual language
y a los pueblos, sino se les posiciona
where you're positioning women as subjects of their own expression.
Muchas gracias, Lorena. ¿Alguien más?
Thank you, Lorena. Somebody else wants to share something? You have other physical ideas that we have to create that incidence
Desde la comunicación.
through communication?
Pero bueno, justo lo que comentó
Well, just like Lorena was mentioning, in terms of who's our audience, this is very important. Like you mentioned, like Isabel mentioned, you have many steps that you have to follow, and you have to define very well the audiences. Well, once you have the audiences very well defined, this will facilitate the spaces in which we're going to be sharing information and the information that we want to share as well, and the ways in which we're going to share it. When we talk about strategic communication, you don't also talk to the masses. Sometimes it can be a video for one person to explain a situation, and then this person is the one who's going to be taking decisions. And then they have an assembly or a meeting or the possibility to have a dialogue. And then through a video or through pictures, you're able to reinforce the message that you want to send them. So that also works if it's a presidential municipal leader or justice proctor or whatever. If it's a specific person, you gotta be thinking about how can I reinforce a message that I want to transmit? Can it be through text? Can it be through pictures, through videos, or what formats can I use? Next slide, please.
Y justo, bueno, por ejemplo, anteriormente comentaban lo
And based on this, well, you were mentioning the community networks or medias that are proper, and then there are allies. We have people that we can, there are means that we can purchase to reach an audience, to get that message across. Our own resources are those spaces that we can control with the facilitation that we have. For example, our social media space, or the platform where Facebook is not ours, but that would depend perhaps on their settings so they can reach more people who are already following us, so they can reach more people. but also in those spaces we can control what we can upload and what not, and that's also on our website. You can also control what we put and the messages that we want to in the through different formats. But those media that are like community radios, we have to negotiate the time that's going to be released, or what other person is going to be sharing that publication in their Facebook or their Instagram, or that it can come together with the email that I bring to a certain email list who already have a certain community. So generally speaking, when you do these alliances with the media, these are people who are speaking to the people who they are already speaking to people that we want to talk to. So there's people who are listening, for waiting for the publication, and that this helps them build a community and gives them proper time and takes consistency and takes effort. And this is why they charge you for this mention. For example, they're known to the influencers, those who influence in the social media platforms. They can charge for a mention because they're uploading information to a story, or they're creating a story, they're speaking about you, and they charge you for that because they're always speaking to their audiences or to that community, and they're uploading different content, and it's a job for them. So they're in a constant publication of information, and this takes a lot of effort. So that's why sometimes they can charge you for something, but many of them can also be seen as a win-win situation or a collaboration where they want to share your information, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a payment involved. And it's to appeal to that message, and to see what is the message that we want to transmit. This event is important because of this and this situation, and we invite you to this space so that you can speak about this topic, so you can create alliances, so that you can have different spaces to get the message across. And also, from the beginning, start uploading information to their own social media on the before. Not only when the event is happening, just come to the event, but also start sharing information based on so that they're not vulnerable, that you can share the steps, every step. So today we are talking about alliances with such organizations. So today we're gathered with so many peers. You can put a picture and perhaps not their faces if people don't want to see their faces. But you always have to ask if you have the consent. Yeah, we spoke about consent. Can we take pictures? Can we publish them on social media? And you can start publishing this information on social media, the messages and the stuff, so that people can have, they want to see the before. They feel part of it, of that effort. So it is important to that we can be able to see our own terms, and seeing when you have an event, when you see whether the activity is happening, or you want to call on people, there's already a public, there's already communities available to you.
Y bueno, ya anteriormente había mencionado los formatos. que los formatos para compartir en medios sociales pueden ser posts
And
en
the
redes
formats to share on social media, they can be
peticiones en línea,
through petitions, through online requests, drafts,
videos, audios,
audios,
aplicaciones
maps,
móviles
mobile apps,
y también pues las intervenciones físicas, ¿no? Como todas las que hablamos anteriormente, que si la iglesia, que
like
si
we mentioned before, which is like
la fiesta, el
through
festival,
parties, through
todas estas
festival,
activaciones que son
all these activations
físicas y que también
through our physical that can be used.
pues actividades digamos híbridas, ¿no? Tanto
You can
desde
do hybrid
una
activities.
marcha o el
We have
taller
marches or workshops, and then we do a follow activity
en línea para que las personas
that can be online.
no están ahí pero están interesadas en el mensaje puedan también recibir parte de esa información que ustedes quieren compartir. Y los formatos, esta es como una estrategia que
And the format, these are ones that can be used in social media.
tener un video muy largo
So we can have a very long video
o de un panel,
or a panel,
una tal vez una entrevista a una
or perhaps an interview to an elder who can be speaking about a situation, and she has experience, and she has been part of the movement. So we have a long video on that, and this long video we can trim it into different small videos. There's an application called CapCut that is free, and that can be a tool that we can use. Or you can also have different formats. We can have infographics when we do this synthesis of the information, and then put the infographic with the most relevant information. Or we can have also a template or a document that we use, and the distribution of it. It can be through websites, through an email list, through a web page within the site with more information, which is a landing page, or through social media. And here mentioning how this can help us, can be accessed through databases that we can be increasing the traffic to a certain publications, the downloads, or the video list. And this is pretty much the content, getting the information out for social media or for physical spaces. Doesn't have to be a different message every time, but through one message that we have, we can be able to republish it and reuse it in different formats.
Okay. Y aquí, pues básicamente, bueno, brevemente, lo que son las redes
And
sociales.
here, briefly, what we have in social network, usually people go into social media with two main interests, which is entertainment and looking for information. And in that sense, it's necessary to have it clear because sometimes it gives us like it lowers our morale because we're saying I'm sharing all this important information and it's important for people to know about it, and there's a cat video and it has more interaction, for example, or has more views or likes, or oh, my video got lost and my information got lost in the midst of that, and they give more likes to a meme, for example, than all the information that I shared, which are 3 paragraphs, and I made it as short as I could. And even then, this other content has more interaction. And sometimes we'll do a video and we want to compare ourselves and it doesn't have the same amount of views, but we need to understand that people also go into the network, these social networks for entertainment, and that they generate a lot of anxiety. So a lot of people go on social network to avoid realities and avoid social and avoid certain interactions. So it is a good space, but we can't leave everything to these channels. And as the social context changes, they have different uses. And we have to think of formats and contents that are going to be important for that training, for that purpose. And it could be memes. If you notice, memes have a very short text, and it's a picture that is adapted to your message. Using memes depends on the audience that you want to reach, because there's somebody who could be very insulted and it would be worse, but it could also be for young people a way to engage them, and they can share that meme. Right now, it's kind of the main use. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, mainly. This is the network of entertainment, and not necessarily a search for information, which is more stronger on YouTube and Google as a source of information. But then it was YouTube, but we have long videos, tutorials where you can write how to do this and different questions, and somebody has taken the time to do a video on that. But also TikTok has been working a lot on having people look for information on that space. And now with these new technologies where you can do subtitles of videos, then you can identify what the topic is, what the video is talking about, and it suggests what you can see. And the app will suggest some searches, for example, based on your interest. And that takes you to similar information. And what it does is that it allows for people to consider this application as a space where you can look for information as well. Other networks as well, social networks as well. Twitter is more of the moment to see what's happened, but the rest of them, it is more entertainment, really. And for searching for information, there's one called SEO, which refers to keywords, and they talk to us about organic search based on the people for this tool. So the more people are looking for this, and our video or our blog responds to these questions, the tool will position with a better grading that content, and it'll show it to more people. It's basically how that algorithm works. The next slide, please. And here, just briefly, Facebook has had like different kinds of publications and formats. We can publish pictures and videos, add feelings, add georeference, do a live transmission, which also have a lot of engagement, because in the end, it's something that's happening during that time, and people are kind of they have expectations, and it's important for the people who are carrying this video interact with people, or interact with the audience, so that it still has good placing and it recommends it to more people. Aside from the fact people who are interacting and leaving messages are being kept in the video. As I said before, the retention of attention of people is less every time. There's so much offer on social media now, that people are just kind of referred on to the next. So it's important to have that in network, that engagement in social network to have a much more positive impact, then you can ask a text just with a background, take a picture from the app, add GIFs, designs, and make events as well. And here Facebook will prioritize images and native content and like lives. What most apps want is that we stay on that app. So if we add a link, it's not going to prioritize us because it's going to take us somewhere else. If you leave to the app, you won't come back. So unfortunately, that's kind of, they make the app even, I could say, more debatable, these tools. You have to use them in a way that works for us. But, you know, here are some general recommendations of what it prioritizes, and some way or another is not so positive for Facebook. For example, external links and titles to the floor, meaning when you have a title that doesn't go with what's in the content of the publication, to lie or why people see it and then they realize it's not what it is and they leave. Repetitive comments, free words, promotion, discount, free, and that's negative because Facebook doesn't want it to be used as a sales platform, but something to relate, or when you ask somebody to share, it's not as positive. But yes, to ask questions that generate engagement and motivate communication and dialogue. So that's good because it promotes engagement. Next. And finally, this is what a good Facebook message would look: less than 40 characters, call to action, an event, a donation, follow the link. They don't like it very much, but in the end, you have to take people to where your information is located. Say clearly what we want the person to do. Go register, just to say clearly what we want the person to do, and identify the best schedule and the best context. The context can be seen like for the topics that are in attendance, that are create a tendency of what the audiences we're trying to communicate to are saying, and a meme. Our message is going to respond to that context. And also the best schedule. Our tool is going to let us know what the best schedules are for our audience, and it's better to put them in that schedule. Although now people can access at different times to the tool, right? To the app. And also invite people to the conversation to create community. Ask a question, but not say share and follow or comment and follow, but just make questions that encourage people to comment. Like, for example, you had commented on, I can't remember that project. But for example, about topics of eliminating violence of Indigenous women. You can ask a question in regards to that. How do you take care of yourself? How do women take care of each other in your community? Something regarding the topic, and that they can share the experience, the reflection, or the good practices from other communities or the same community, for example. That would be a good idea. Also mention when we mention a person, it's going to share it with the profile of other people, and we have we're more relevant. And also using emoticons, we have more participation. Emojis are usually text, and emojis allow us to facilitate the facial expressions, and people are like, oh, okay, this goes to this person. So using emojis increases or improves the reading on social media. Share with family and friends who have a similar profile so that they can share, and that's where you start seeing some movement. And then also it gives you more it gives more relevance to accounts that have been around for longer because they have more credibility. This is to combat fake news, where they have a new profile and they add something completely fake, which is happening very much. So to tend to that, they are limiting the reach of these new accounts so that you have a community sees it as a positive. As you have more positive comments, you're going to have more credibility. And also hashtags, which are tools to group information, are very useful and are very recommended. Next. And something that's really giving Facebook a lot of highlight are Facebook groups, which are spaces to exchange information on common topics with different kinds of people. Even currently, it's giving a lot of relevance because what it wants is this parts of connections amongst people, so that people now, to share certain things of their daily lives, they go to stories and they look. Before, social networks would bring you close to people who are right close to you, your schoolmates, your work buddies, but now they bring you closer to people who have interests that are similar to yours, and that's how they show you publications that they know you like and are interesting to you, and they prioritize it through Facebook groups. Here there are some steps to do a group from a web page. Sorry, from a Facebook page. You have a Facebook page, and from that page you can have a Facebook group with the same name, and you can see that the owner is this page, not just as a person. As a social organization, as a community organization, Facebook groups are a good strategy because they don't just, they reach more people who have these interests. So like if you do like a group of women, Indigenous women, Indonesia, or it's going to reach more people, and you can identify who you're going to reach. They don't necessarily know you, you target them because of the shared interest. So the advantage is that you don't have to share your only, but your community itself shares content, and that's how it's being fed. An important point is that we need to have designated some people that help us, that are administrators, that will monitor if there's a content that's not related to what the group is about, it can be eliminated. But Facebook groups currently are a good strategy, and they have more reach than pages. Next. Facebook pages. Well, here we have some examples of Facebook groups, like a cultural diversity, groups. These are Latin American groups. And for example, we see that one of them has 70,000 people. And the other one has 400 members. Sorry. So it's a very important reach. If you want, you can even prioritize if you want a page or a Facebook. And through your personal profile, you can not only you share, if it's a group or a collective, all of you can share information and you can have more people join. It could be a public group or a private group or a hidden group. A hidden group is that only people who have the link can access. That's a hidden group. But the important thing is that you are monitoring that content that doesn't go with the subject is uploaded. And also when you add people to the group, you can ask for data that are important to you to know that these are people that are interested in the topic, and that it's not somebody who wants to go sell a product or something like that. For example, what indigenous communities do you belong to, and what activities are you doing, or what are your interest topics, or it could be of indigenous communities and their specific community and municipality or their state. At the end of the day, to group as indigenous women with subjects that are common to us allow us to distribute the message better. For example, FIMI, that's global, is focusing on a global community, but we can we ourselves can focus on our local groups, and in the future that can generate messages that can identify with people from our local communities. Next. Well, here are some steps to create a page. It includes different functions based on the category that you select. You can select a community space, and usually it'll ask you for a profile picture and a background picture. Really, this is very intuitive to create these pages. If anybody needs help, please write to us. But here are some steps. Next, please. These are examples of pages. Next one, please. The next network that we're going to share is TikTok, which is the network that has had, social network that have the biggest growth in the last years, especially during COVID pandemic. And the difference that we observed with other tools is that it doesn't matter here that you have super production here or that you have the best camera or anything like that. What we're looking for in this particular platform is a message, that it's a message that's connecting people. That's the priority that allows that for a video to become viral. Even if your other videos don't have big reach, but if one does, people are going to create communities very, very easily. Here, some things have changed, but for a lot of people, it's still the social network with the biggest growth. And here it depends a lot on the audience we want to reach. But I think in terms of population, a lot of them are on this network, on this social network, and they consider their videos on this format because they're quick, they're immediate, they're made with video. So here are short videos. They have a lot of users, and it's the network with the biggest growth and has a lot of filters that provide a lot of variety and curiosity. And for users, we already have, we can generate a lot of interaction, and people expect fun content here. Like, it's like you're talking one-on-one to people in this platform. And there's commercials. People are like, oh, I saw a commercial, I didn't realize it was a commercial. Because you can really connect to people through this, and brands use it so that these are not so elaborate videos like in cameras and stuff, but instead that the message is shared there more spontaneously and organically. Next slide. And we have Instagram, which is of the social networks that are still growing, that have different uses based on the different groups of population. For example, young people only use stories. They use it on their feed, the ones that stay permanently on stories. Stories can also be grouped and based on topics. You can publish there on their project, on their experiences, or positive comments. You can group it based on if you have more than one area that you're having, you're developing your project. You can always add the different places and the challenges. I've seen people who put on their highlighted story donations, like what could these people who are following the message, what can they donate? And then they add it to an Amazon wish list, and then from there you can kind of have people send you products that you require without the need to have a legal framework or entity, or that they have to pay taxes for that because somebody else bought it and they sent it to you. So there's a lot of creative ways to use these tools. Really, Instagram is based on images and videos with multiple filters and edit. Now, Instagram, it wants to be more similar to TikTok. One picture have a lot of relevance, but it's been adding different formats. You can publish a picture with a song. You can picture a series of pictures. That's called a carousel. You can share reels, which are short videos, and you can also do lives. And in your lives, you can invite other people to participate, and that way they can reach the person's audience as well. So it's the importance of alliance in these networks is for the growth of your communities and internet is very important. These are efforts that we want to consider in these plans, these alliances. We've added other things that are kind of been going. There's channels, which are kind of like a message space. People publish for certain groups that they want to be a part of that, like a text, but they don't receive communication. You just provide it. Now in Instagram, you can do collaborative publishing, which is something that FIMI is going to really going for that. We want to publish the global, but also the local. We want to do collaborative publications with local organizations as well, so that we can do alliances amongst ourselves to do publish we get together and we say, okay, this is the content we're going to do, and so we tag each other, and it appears in everybody's Instagram who's collaborating, and it reaches both channels to the two profiles. Next one, please. Okay, that's kind of what we refer to the social network one. Once we publish our contents, we need to monitor them. We need to continue listening what's working and what's not working. We have to be very clear of our context and how our audience is reacting, what they're saying. Oh, I didn't understand this. Oh, I thought this was something else. So really listen to the feedback of our audience. Or I was confused with the date. What's the date? And you can get that feedback to improve our communication. Also, how the different actors are changing, like organizations, companies, how are they reacting to these publications? Here we have some questions. Are we reaching the audience that we want? Or how our audience react? Are we generating the impact that we want? What's working, what's not working? How do we follow up on these actions? What new needs for communication are arising? So we have to continue to listen, publish, adjust, redo, and continue communicating and continue listening. That monitoring is important because in the end, communication is a dialogue. It's not just that we are giving that information, but we also have to listen to how our audience is receiving what we say and what they're saying in regards to that. So next. One part is monitoring and the next is evaluation, which is monitoring and evaluation, and it can be through social network. The physical part is to listen directly to the people who are a part of our audience, but also if we're looking for a more global audience or larger audience, we can always add hashtags or tags and see and follow certain accounts and see if people are actually following those tags and how much they're appropriating our messages and making it their own. And if people are doing their own content with the messages that we're promoting, do content checks and tests of our messages. We can publish in our text messages or in our emails. We can send a message with a commenter or with else. We can see which one had more impact, for example, and then for the rest of the people, we send them with the message that had the most impact, for example. We can also have metrics or numbers, which are the statistics that social networks provide, or the number of participants that are in the workshop, or the ones that answered some sort of a survey, see if the survey was positive, negative, or neutral, so that this information can tell us if we have to make an adjustment or if we're really reaching the objective that we thought about at the beginning. Next one. At the end, all of this can be seen in a format, which could be a calendar, and we can do it per month or per project, where we're going to add the date, the context in which we want to share that message, the date, the platform, the audience to which it's directed, because as I mentioned before, you can have more than one audience. So if it's directed to a primary audience or secondary audience or third tertiary audience, the message we want to share, the alliances we want to have so that that message reaches more people, the hashtags or the tags that we're going to add. Here we can add we can add hashtags that we can create or some that have already been positioned by other organizations like Indigenous communities, like we are Indigenous, like we're Indigenous people, or depending on the context. The campaign for the 16 days of activism to eliminate violence. Different hashtags, or also we can use some that have a tendency that are related to our subject, and that we can make sure that they are suggested to people from our social network. We can select here if it's a post, a publication, and the different formats that are simpler to us, and the person in charge of publishing it or creating this content. Here I just kept on going. Do you have any questions so far? I didn't stop before to ask, I'm sorry. Do we have any questions?
No, está muy claro, muchas gracias.
Bueno, pues con esta
Okay, perfect. So this slide, I finished what we wanted to share, we finished what we wanted to share with you. As I said before, there's a lot of theory maybe. It's the different steps that we need to follow. And so it's a constant listening process, and like of the different audiences and what they're interested in. It's what I guess I could, so that we can achieve this communication context and the change objectives. Isa? On the contrary, thank you for listening and for the questions in the comments. If you have any questions, we're at your service, and we hope to be able to see that communication component in your incident plans and learn, of course, because even though we've been doing this for a while, we need to learn. We need to constantly be in a learning process. That's the beauty of it, to learn from each other. Lore, Dunen, we're here at your service. If there's anything else that you need.
Agradecemos a Isa y a Citlali por los aportes que
we thank Isa and Citlali for the information that they've provided. We believe that it really is relevant to the process of research that we're doing. It's a tool. Communication is a tool that could have a political intention, which is what we want to have be clear. Communication is a political element for the different objectives that you have in your research, especially for your incidents plan. When you establish it as a strategy, an incident strategy, what you share with us today gives us tools to do that. And the possibility, I love it when the sisters were saying the different ways that peoples can communicate, and how do we take advantage of this knowledge to promote communication, a communication that it generates dialogue that liberates us, not a vertical dialogue, but a circular intergenerational dialogue. And that what I do feel is what is very clear to me is that we have to be very clear as to which actors we want to include and have an incidence on, because that's going to determine the audience or the community that we want to reach. If we're clear on that, then we'll know the route to follow. Another important part is to have objectives or a change objective. And so we have information and tools that Isabel and Citlali have left us so that we can continue building this process that has been very enriching. I don't know if any of you would like to comment something else, or do you have a question? The sisters from Asia, Africa, or Latin America? No questions? Yes, we do want to share. Yes. Thank you. We would like to thank Isa and Citlali for what they have shared with us. I really like this last example that Citlali was showing us of doing like a specific calendar to share something. For example, I am in a collective and we have a Facebook page, and we're 3 people who are editors, and we have not defined who's going to publish and what time and in what date. And I think I'm going to take this example. I think it's very useful. And I wanted to ask you something to both of you. Working in social network has a lot of virtual that you shared with us, but I am assuming it also has a lot of information where we need to be very careful, no? Because now people everywhere have a lot of access to them. It's very simple to use them incorrectly. And for example, pictures. I ask you, as a FIMI team, how do you, or what are your politics when you share pictures to avoid, for example, that others make bad use of them, especially when you have people's faces on them? That was like my biggest question. Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, we always ask for permission, free and previous informed consent of the pictures, audios, and videos. That's basic for for every action, whether it's online or in any way. And in that consent, we explain what we're going to use them for, which is for human rights and etc. If there is a sister that or brother that says, no, I don't authorize, it's a collective picture and somebody says no, then we go ahead and we blurry their face as a protection. Or if a community says, no, you can't take pictures, then we don't take pictures. And we don't use pictures or videos. Some people can use their testimony, but without their names, for example, without making a direct reference of who they are because of protection reasons. That's one. Two, we always try, usually we haven't taken pictures of us. In this case, we use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and now LinkedIn. And we don't add a watermark, but that is a shared use, so it's a created common. There are people who could use them within the framework of human rights and the community that we ask permission from, and the community or the people can use their own pictures, but there's always that situation that somebody could use this picture that is not right. And if that happens, we would have to go through a judicial or strategy to eliminate this use. To this date, we haven't had that situation happen, but of having a have to use a legal tool for that. Usually the agreement between the parties has always been positive. We've never had a negative experience. When we find a picture or a publication that does not have the credit, we write to that organization. We make sure to tell them that they need to provide credit to the community and the photographer so that everything is clear, right? But we also ourselves give the credit to the photographer and the community because they are owners of the building of that material. For example, right now we have a tendency of photographers that are in the commercial environment that they feel 100% authors of these materials, and they say that they will take the picture or the video, but that they are the authors and they give you the license for a specific amount of years. So we don't work with those kinds of people because we have to recognize that maybe she's a co-owner because she's the technical person who did the picture, but there is a co-property of the people, of the community, and so FIMI pays this mission so that this person goes, and so it's co-owner. So within the agreement, we have added that the photographer can use this picture without um, without profit, what is with notification to FIMI and to the community. If they want to use it, for example, for their portfolio, and sometimes they use pictures to say that for FIMI they did this project, for example. So that's kind of working with the parties. If we ask that these pictures are not sold in their catalog or in the portfolio, because these are pictures that get FIMI subventions, that also needs to be respected. And the other is that when you work with audio visual, that like reporters, we also, these are people that have already been working with us, not once or twice, but that have worked with us for many years. And so this allows, and their profile is very much related to gender and human resource and human rights, sorry. So we already have them recognized, and so they're generally not going to do any action that are activists or that exploit these materials or of the community. And also when they want to go again to do something special with you, they notify us because we recommended them with you to go to these places. And of course, there needs to be a relationship of trust between the community and those people. If somebody from the community says, we don't want to work with this person that you sent, well, then the entire process is suspended. We don't continue working with them. And before the person goes, we always explain that these are communities that could be experiencing violence from different agencies or governments, and that they need to have that tax vision. And they don't know they're signing a previous commitment. And formed that can be shared by them. And that's how we try to create consensus. We always ask if the person wants to be in the picture or not, if their voice is distorted or not, so that there are no conflicts, and we don't make anybody vulnerable, and we always speak about a right of people and their image, their culture, and their knowledge, no? So, because it is important to promote what is being done to generate empathy, solidarity, so that things change in our community. So we try to protect ourselves from in that way, and obviously there's a privacy policy that we align with very much in terms of the legal framework that is the most validated and recognized at a global level, which is of the European Union. And of course, that we have to update it continuously, and so that it is a instrument that is relevant, so that we are not in trouble in the future. But it is true that we all ask if they want to be a part of it and make their image public and their voice public, or their culture, so that we are all in the same page. And if at some point somebody makes a bad use of it, we can go ahead and move forward legally.
Algo que podría sumar, bueno, pues muchas veces nosotras en comunidad somos quienes.
Something we wanted to add. Sometimes in communities, we're the ones who take the pictures.
Pues somos nosotras. Básicamente subir a internet lo que no tenemos problema en que.
You can't upload. Somebody else has.
Pues sí, es algo como.
Because we know.
Usaron mi foto, cosas así.
I took the pictures. It's more complex, especially with AI now, in which you can take your picture and make adjustments and put you in other contexts, perhaps. So this is important to have. What is the audience that we have? If our audience is a community, then not all the communities are going to be for social media. We can pick some pictures, print them, and put them in a mural or someplace. In those places, we're going to be sharing with the community. But we are going to be, there's photographies, there's photos from ceremonies that can be sensitive for some people in the communities for some context. Explain to them what the ceremony is about, what is happening in that space, why is it important. And people can see just a picture or a video, and then why are you hurting the animal, something like that. And we have to have a report against our account. So knowing who we want to share with these pictures, if it's for the community, or perhaps we can find some material that not be all on the internet, and we're going to distribute them in other ways, or we're going to share them in other spaces. And perhaps we're going to upload things to social media and try to have pictures of people we can see their hands working or weaving, or not so much the faces. So beyond, especially for their minors. So it's better to showcase the action. So even with, like Isabel mentioned, no, it's a picture, you can upload my picture, and it's a group picture, and you have more people there, but you have to download, you have to take it down. So you have to always ask, and in those group activities especially, knowing who we want to share those images with, that information with, and get that information perhaps in other ways, through other channels, perhaps not other social media. Thank you. And then also, please, with the topics of children or on children,
No, nada más para recalcar esto
just to highlight something about this topic around children, it is important. Children, the parents or tutors of children are the ones who give the consent to use those images for minors and adolescents. And you can always ask them, but obviously you have to recognize that the state recognizes the tutoring of the adults for the children. Generally, it's preferably not to use pictures or use them and erase them. We have some that have been authorized and that we always share the material. For example, the physical in terms of human rights with the decision makers. And why is this important? Because there's a lot of human trafficking about children in social media. And when these children are easy to be found, when you can tell who they are, who it's an issue. Because the media with those human trafficking are very, very pending about. And then the vulnerability is always there in children and the communities, adolescents and communities, youth, boys and girls. And it's a topic that is very delicate and it's very, very hot nowadays. So it is important that you know this and that the same mothers are not sharing this picture of their children in social media. And if they do, they know that they are they're allowing people who have contact, are allowing people to have access to that information, people who have no good intentions. So the people who do human trafficking are indigenous people. So if they have very close profile, very private profiles or something, or depending on who they're selecting with their profiles, even if we have printed layouts, we have pictures of children, and we do this in spaces where they're very safe and where we know that they won't reach human trafficking. So this is the delicate topic, and there is ways like saying, taking picture of these people or the children from the back or laterally, or make an allusion to a toy, so that they're not that their identities cannot be recognized. Their identities always have to be safeguarded. That's my. Thank you very much. Thank you both. It's been very important for all of us in this process of the Human Intercultural Research Diploma. And it's a key tool for the process that we're undergoing right now. Now that we have, they're doing the research in the communities, it's very important to show the consent, and that prior consent that they give for the pictures and videos and the interviews and to publish information. So thank you very much for teaching us this. It's been a very important campaign day for us today. And the process has been very ideal for the process, the stage we're in right now. Thank you, everyone. And we just want to remind you that some of you have not finished your homework, your incident plan. If you can tell that you have an incident plan, is very important to this communication plan and the presentation today. So the initial question, what is your incident objective? So one topic is related to the other. So please, I remind you, finish your incident plan, upload the guides. We have the guides with them, put them in the Moodle, and send them to the chat box so that we can review them, give you feedback, and we can keep going more forward. Let's invite you once again for the Friday session. Everyone in your plan, in the exercise, you did a list of actors. Today we found out how important it is to know who we're targeting, who we want to give the message to, and who we want to have an influence with the communication. So please, I'm gonna send you later on in that afternoon or whatever it is in your time zone, a box where you're gonna present to us on Friday, where you're gonna be building this list based on what we have made today, on the experience that we have lived today, or what we have identified through our research. So with this, we're gonna conclude. Thank you very much. Have a happy day, happy afternoon, and good rest to those going to bed right now. Thank you, Isabel and Secretary. Once again, hugs.
Gracias, compañeras.
Thank you very much. Take care.